did we get the business that Eliaba is? Eliaba is in here. Eliaba is translated as Yah hides. I mean, excuse me, uh, Eli hides. El hides. That's Heru Hop in Egypt, or Heru Amen. Because Hop and Amen are totally interchangeable. They're two different names of the same deity, and it's the hidden God, the hiding and hidden deity, who has this strange hieroglyph which is one angle line over another angle line, which reads both outer line as hyper or super and the inner line as sub. And then the whole logo is revelatory of the hiding and hidden, or covering and covered, greater than the greatest, bigger than the biggest, smaller than the smallest, super and sub deities, with the super being the transcendent original personality of Godhead, and the sub being the immanent Lord of the heart, pervading all things, which is where you get to the hidden God, Amun Ra, is Hop Amun. And then, of course, you have Aten Ra and Aten and Atum in the north, Atum or Aton in the north, Ra. So Aten and Amen, or the Aten in the south, Aten, these are all associated with Amen, or the Paramatma is associated with Brahman, the all-pervasive form of the Lord. So he is the hiding and hidden God that is beyond and outside of and beneath our perception. And what I'm looking for right now is I'm keeping seeing things that distract me. But I'm looking for, I want to go see Yada. There's so many different things in here. So what is a very, very important symbol of Ra in Egypt?
Sun disk, chakra.
What else?
The serpent?
The eye.
The eye, yeah.
Okay. Here in the lexicon, the Hebrew lexicon, we see that the word Raah has been translated as behold 83 times, consider 22 times, discern,
Gaze.
so on and so forth. But look at this down here. Look on, look out, getting down here. 871 times to see. Now, interestingly enough, if we go over to the and I've got a little eye on there, and I have a little, RE and the sun disk and so forth. Why? Because Ra is a root name of the sun. From the Gita verse that I read today, Ravi, Ra is a root name of the sun, of Krishna or Vishnu as the sun. So the eye is a symbol of the sun and the symbol of Ravi. But now there's something else going on here. This is where the things get confounded sometimes. The other half of Rahu Ketu, Ketu, the enemy of the Devas and the enemy of Vishnu, he is called Rahu. And he's like a personification of evil. He causes possession, madness, death, disease, decay, and so on and so forth. Look at over here.
RAA is be evil, be grieved, bring evil, do harm, hurt. Yeah.
Mischief, wickedly, worse, entreat evil, hurt, punish, vexed, evildoer, evil man, wicked doer, be broken, break in pieces, be destroyed, show self, Oh, there's a show self-friendly. That's a strange thing. Anyway, so this is the kind of thing that causes confounding.
Right.
So Rajan, you know Rajan.
Raja's king.
Yeah, Rajan is king. Raja or Rajan.
Razan, prince or ruler.
And see, you know, you can go in here and you can see exactly where it's used in the text.
Sure.
So I love these concordances. You can do so much. They save you so much. Here's another Razan, prince. See, different, a little bit different here. Okay, I'll go over here. Rosh. No, Rosh. Rosh can be like head too, someplace. But look at this. Rosh, Raj. Again, it's translated captain 10 times. Let's say chiefest, chief man 4 times, chief place 1, chief things. Head 349. Ruler 2. Top 75. So Rosh can mean both Raj, the head. It can mean social, the rim of the social body. It can mean chief. 90 times it's used for chief.
I think the letter Resh means head too.
Right. The ancient hieroglyph for Rosh or Resh is the head. Yeah. For the seers, the ancient seers, there's Roha, vision. It's used for vision once, but it's a title elsewhere used. I should go back in here and look at that too. Let's see. Oh, I love this. Now you know that the Yod and the Vow are almost identical. One's got a little bit of a longer tail on it.
Right. Yada. Acknowledge, advise. See what the big one is.
Yes.
Just can tell, discern, be sure. Knowledge, respect. No, 662. It means to know. Yada.
Okay, but not only that, to be known 34 to
Make
be
known.
known 17, all the way down through. If you follow all of these, and Yeda too, Yeda. It's in here.
Yada. Know, certify, make known, teach.
Yeah, 22 times, is that it?
Yeah.
19 times here.
Yep. To know and make known.
Okay, and now if you go to the actual references that look at the actual passages, all through the scripture, it's revealed knowledge of God, the knowing of God, divine knowledge. And what is that? If Yahoo is Vasu, then Yeda is what?
Veda.
Yeah, Veda.
How do you deal with the words that are so common? The exact same word means to be thankful, to give thanks.
Because
And then-
because in almost all languages, well, in all languages, pretty much, any word will have several different meanings, at least 2 or 3 different meanings. Sometimes there have half a dozen or more different meanings. So what you have to do is you have to look at how many times is that word translated as this, that, or something else. And you've got more than 700 times I've added them up. More than 700 times, yada or yada is translated as knowledge. And it's divine knowledge, or the knowledge that God has, or the knowledge of God, that is, the giant preponderance of it. More than 700 times it's used that way in the Old Testament. So what do you say when you see something like this? It says, it's translated, give thanks one time. Thank one time. Right next to it, yada, to know 22 times, certify 4 times, make known 19 times, teach 1 time. And these are their translations, mind you. So the answers, I don't have to make up any answers. The answers are already there. So now let's look at this. Let's ask ourselves. Let's go to the Hebrew names list. Understanding that the yada is a J in these names. It's not written like that. We have yada, but it's not written like that. Jedediah. Where is Jedediah? Jediah. Find it. Jediel. Jediah. You see these names?
Yes.
What does that tell you? Remember that this J is a Y,
right.
is a V.
That God is knowledge, or God is Veda. L is.
Yeah. Here's the original spelling.
Yadal. Yadiel. Yadaya. Ya is Yada, and L is Yada.
If you go to the litanies of Krishna, guess what? Vedayaha is the name of Krishna.
Oh my.
Vedayaha. He is the object of knowledge.
Vedaya is the name of Krishna.
Oh yeah,
Exact same
Vedaya.
name.
Yeah, I'm saying they're all through here. It's all through here, Prabhu. There's dozens and dozens and dozens of names of Krishna, Vishnu in here, in the Bible, right here in the Bible, in the Hebrew. And you go over to the Greek Septuagint where these names are translated into the Greek. Oh my God, it's much more clear. I'm showing you the harder to get Hebrew version. Now, Hari Veda, Veda Hari, Vedayaha, name of Krishna, meaning he is the object of knowledge, the knower of knowledge, and the knowledge itself, Vedayaha. And there you have it. Now, let's go to the names. Let's just go look and see. You can see why this would take many, many lifetimes. Well, I never get bored. I've never been bored in my whole life. There's so many things I want to follow up, and it's just like I'm torn between the pursuit and I'm moving so fast through time that I'm trying to leave crumb trails, for other people. I'm saying, come look at this, look at this, look at this.
Well, you've overproved your thesis. You don't have to do any more work. You've proven it already.
I have. You buy it now? Are you ready? You're gonna.
I'll subscribe.
You'll subscribe. All right. Well, you won't be getting anything every month and a bill with it either. It's just something you have to take with you in your heart and your mind, and leave crumb trails behind you for the next person to come along. I'm telling you, it doesn't have anything to do with any content of my brain or anything. It's all out there in the world. People just have to look for it. So change your angle of vision a little tiny bit. All of a sudden, whoa, there it is. I'm looking this up under J.
What inspiration led you to theophoric names, which is the basis of your work? What led you there in the first place?
Well, first in the first place it was very traumatic for me that my absolutely saintly Southern Baptist grandma, whose name was Myra, which is a form of Mary, absolutely extraordinary woman, had fear, mortal fear of Catholicism. And my Irish Catholic grandma, Mary, was another Mary, devout Irish Catholic. She is an absolute saint. But I lived with my Baptist grandma, and I saw in her and I heard it from her expressions of great fear of Catholicism. And she was afraid for my soul. So I felt this terrible tension in my family. My family didn't practice any religion because, mom and dad said, don't talk politics or religion with people. And they were in a delicate situation where my grandfather, I'm assuming now that my grandfather, we talked recently about the Sherman side of the family, right? And the Heatley was a
Minister.
a German Lutheran minister. So I know that on the one side of the family, we had Lutheran ministers married in with Irish Catholics. And my mother's side of the family, Methodist and Baptist. And my grandfather, saint, another great saint. I mean, an extraordinary man. He's the one that started out cleaning outhouses in the black section of town and ended up as the president of the American Institute of Banking. And he never touched a drop of alcohol. He was so pious, extraordinary, wonderful, loving man. He was an adept Mason, a Scottish Rite Mason. So I had this strange family situation, a mixture of my devout Methodist grandfather on my mother's side, my devout Baptist grandmother on my mother's side. My Methodist grandfather was also an adept Mason, and a Lutheran grandfather on my dad's side, and a devout Catholic, Irish Catholic. And there was this tension, and I was deprived because of all of this. I was raised with of course, my parents were right in one way. They didn't want me to be locked into any particular one of these things. So they said, they're not going to take me to church. They're not going to indoctrinate me. They're going to, when I get old enough, I can figure it out myself. That was kind of their attitude. And they exposed me to great literature and stuff. We never did Bible reading or anything, but I had to memorize the the commandments, and I had to know the Lord's Prayer. Just really basic stuff. And but I went to church with my grandmother, my Baptist grandmother, my grandfather. I went to church as much as I could. I loved going to church. I could never get enough of it. And my neighbors across the street were mafia, Italian or Sicilian, and they were extraordinarily wealthy. And they paid me 50 cents a week or something like that to walk their little girl to school. And so when I go over early in the morning, I'd find the mother, when I go over early to pick up the little girl and walk her to school, I'd come in the house. And the mother had a beautiful shrine with Mary there. And the mother would be saying the rosary, or they'd have like incense going, or candles lit, scented candles or something. And I was totally fascinated because I saw that this at my grandmother's house too. My grandmother would go in and say her rosary, and she had a statue of Mary in the foyer. So, really wanting to know what people believed and why they believed it and how it influenced the way they treated each other was one of the fundamental impetus to my studying. And the other thing was this internal drive for insatiable appetite for everything associated with God.
I can understand that, but what led you specifically to the theophoric names?
Well,
it's like a key that isn't given.
Right. This is
like,
this is the beginning. So that was the beginning. So already in my early teens, I was ravenously consuming everything I could find. If I tell you another story, I'm going to have to ask you to turn that off. But anyway, I'll just continue with this for now, and I'll tell you that other private thing later. But anyway, I had my King James Bible from my grandma Myra, and Of course, you can't read the King James Bible without reading all these names of everybody. Daniel, Michael, Jeremiah, like that. The New Testament, you have all these names. There's some of them are like Greek names or so. Reading the Bible, I'm wondering. Remember, I'm insatiable. I have to know. I have to know about all these things. So I'm wondering about all these stories. I mentioned this to you the other day. How are we doing on batteries on that thing?
All right.
Okay. This is why I got into studying the theophoric names. I'm reading all these stories about all these people who are not Hebrews, Israelites, or Jews. And it's obvious that they're worshiping the one true God. Now, I'll just mention a few stories. Like, for instance, I mentioned the other day the story of Jonah. God says, basically, my people in Assyria and Nineveh, the capital, they've fallen away from me. They're become apostate. I want you to go back there. You go to Nineveh and you warn them and you say, if you don't come back to the Lord, he's just going to wipe you out. And so there you have a story where it's more than implied that those people worship the one true God. So then immediately I want to know who, when, where, why, and how it was that they worshiped the one true God. I'm more interested in the before than I am in the story of their salvation in the time of Jonah. So numerous other examples. Abraham gets to Salem, which is later called Jerusalem, and he's greeted by the priest king of Salem, Melchizedek, where there's that name Zedek, Tzaddik. And Melchizedek, the archetype of the Raja Rishi. Remember, in Vaishnavism, you have the king saint, Raja Rishi. And the Rishi has a cognate in Roa for the biblical side of the thing. So Melchizedek means, king, righteous king, the Rishi king. But in this case, the word that is used is the tzaddik, which is a sadhu. So he's a sadhu king. He's a saint king, just like the Raja Rishis in India. And he offers bread and wine. He gives bread and wine to Abraham, and this is understood to be sacramental. Well, here's a big question. If Abraham is a worshiper of the one true God, he's coming to Salem, and the priest king of Salem is already a devotee of the one true God. Who is this guy, and what tribe, what people is he representing? Isn't that obvious? So now another story involving Abraham. Abraham goes to Egypt, and his wife is beautiful, and he's afraid somebody's going to kill him to take his wife. So he tells everybody that Sarah is his sister. So the Pharaoh is, sweet on Sarah. I mean, he's thinking about her. And God, he's tight with God, God appears to him in a dream or speaks directly to him and says, no, wait a minute. Don't have those feelings because she's the wife of Abraham. And God doesn't want Pharaoh to sin against him. God warns him. So wait a minute. What's God talking to this pagan Pharaoh for? Well, he's a worshiper of the one true God. So Pharaoh takes God's advice and doesn't sin with Sarah and so on and so forth. So there you have another example of a Pharaoh who is a worshiper, a devotee of the one true God. He's on speaking terms with God. So who's that guy? Story after story after story in the Jewish scripture involves people who are not identified as Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews, but who are worshipers of the one true God. Amazing stories, like the story when they're coming out of the wilderness and they come into the Levant, and the Lord has told them, "You do this and that, and if they don't receive you, you kill them." Well, what are they coming out of? They're coming out of a period of slavery in the Levant. it's been assumed that it was the non-Semite Egyptians who oppressed the Semite Hebrews during the period of slavery. And it was Semite Hebrews that left to go back to the Holy Land. And they were pursued by non-Semite Egyptians. And my understanding of the whole thing, and I haven't put a date on it because I don't have enough information yet to put a date on it. But I'll tell you what is true about it. Whenever it was the mixed multitude that were enslaved and that were liberated, that mixed multitude was enslaved under the Hyksos, or whoever those Set worshippers were, because that mixed multitude worshipped Helios or Horus. And there was already this situation where the Set worshippers were the arch enemies of the Helios worshippers. Now we have an interesting thing. North Egypt is conquered by a foreign people, generally called the Hyksos, generally assumed to be Semites from the Levant. And they come in, what do? They change the capital of Egypt, northern Egypt, from Heliopolis to Avaris, the seat of Setu worship. They were Setu worshippers. They were there for hundreds of years. Now, if the mixed multitude, because it's described that not only were the descendants of the Hebrews and the Israelites liberated from slavery in Egypt, but with them was a vast mixed multitude. It's just called mixed multitude. But we can understand that they would have been the co-religionists. They would have been the other Helios worshippers. That when they escaped and they came into the Levant, that mixed multitude had been enslaved in Egypt under the same people that they would be encountering in the Levant. Now, if they came to a city and the city was Helios worshippers and accepted them, this is a ragtag group that's coming out of the wilderness. They're going to have to conquer by things like blowing horns and the walls falling down. This is the Jericho story. But here's the fascinating story that I wanted to bring your attention to. The Hivites, or Hurrians, some people say Hurrians. I can't remember the name of the city, but basically the multitude that came into the Promised Land, they pretty much introduced themselves, and to see whether they had welcome or not, or these people are going to enslave you after everything you've been through. You've gone through all of that, and then you're walking right into a town where they're going to make slaves out of you. So, slavery was not an option. Very interesting. Some ambassadors show up at the camp, and they look like they've come from a very, very far away. Their shoes are all worn and their clothes are all dirty and ragtag, and they come to the leader of the multitudes, and they say, "Our God is your God. We've come from a long way. We've heard of your great, glorious deliverance from Egypt. We're kin. Our God is your God. Make a treaty with us." And Joshua made a treaty with them. Turns out it was a big trick, because their village was like just over the next hill. But they made a pact in the name of God, the same God. They made a treaty. So the biblical heroes, being very unhappy that it had been duped, but being very, honoring, because these people are worshipers of the same God. They just didn't. They've heard they didn't want to get wiped out. This is a great story. So they became hewers of wood and haulers of water in the temple of the Lord. So that group, that tribe of people, those in the town, actually became temple servants, hereditary temple servants for the Jewish deity. And they're sometimes called Hivites. I think I probably could find them in here. But some scholars say they think they were Hurrians. So here's another one of these interesting connections, right, between the family of Krishna, or the so-called Aryans, which are the Hari Jana, worshippers of Hari, or the Surasenoi, and the Jews, or the Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews. So the treaty was made because they had the name of the same God. They were worshiping the same God. So that was among examples of peoples that aren't identified as Hebrews, Israelites, and Jews, but are worshiping the same God. So another amazing example is, I believe it's during the reign of the great reformer Josiah. The king of Israel is, or was it Judah? Josiah was Israel, or was he Judah? I can't remember right now.
Can't remember either.
Okay, anyway, King Josiah, he was the great reformer who found the books of the law and purged the idolatry from the temple and reformed the people, and took the emblem of the Rodon as the emblem of his reign. I think I explained that, right? So, I mean, there is no hint of corruption attached to his name. I mean, he's the solid guy. So the Assyrians were going to come in and conquer the Holy Land. And King Necho, I believe, Pharaoh Necho, I might be wrong on the name, but you get the general story. God says to him, you've got to go and fight the Assyrians. He had the biggest, only army that was able to kick the Assyrians at the time. And the Lord raised him up, a huge army, and said, you've got to go stop the Assyrians. Something's going to happen in history that's not going to be good for the rest of the world. And so he raised this huge army, and he had to go through Judea. He had to go through the Holy Land to go meet the Assyrians on a territory where he could, he had a strategy. And I believe it was the pious King Josiah that said, no way, you're not coming through my territory. And King Necho, Pharaoh Necho, I think he sent a letter or something saying, I have no quarrel with you. It's not about you. I'm not going to do anything. I haven't raised this army to conquer you. I'm not going to conquer you. We're not going to bother you. We have to march through your land in order to smite the Assyrians. And the king, in his spiritual pride and comfort and security, did not recognize and honor that the Pharaoh was also the Lord's man. The Pharaoh of Egypt was the Lord's man doing the Lord's bidding. Another example, once again, of someone who's not a Hebrew, Israelite, or Jew who is doing the Lord's bidding. So it was a terrible situation. The Pharaoh marched his people. He wanted to just pass through there peaceably, and King Josiah fought him, I guess. Anyway, what happened was he didn't go to Assyria. He didn't stop the onslaught. The repercussion was that the Assyrians were successful. They destroyed the entire region. They destroyed all the sacred cities of all the places of God's worship, took everybody into captivity and slavery, destroyed their libraries, took all their precious, the paraphernalia of the temples, plundered the temples. Then that began the Assyrian, and then the Neo-Babylonian, captivity flowed from that entire thing that God said, let this guy through, he's going to stop something really bad. And that whole epic severed the East and the West. It was a whole period, a dark age, because at that time the Assyrians were completely corrupt. And so there was this dark age that just suppressed everything. And whenever you had these dark ages in that intermediate part of the world, severing the East from the West, it just nail in the coffin. It just created more and more separation, loss of memory. You have one generation, you have 20 years, 40 years, 60 years, maybe 80 years. And you have so many generations, and you have a severance of generations in a whole area for hundreds of miles or 1,000 miles that's dominated by some hostile force, the false gods of the world, all broken up and all fighting each other. And there's no understanding. Then what happens is that just the memory distance gets farther and farther and farther away. So now the challenge to us is, after so many thousands of years and thousands of miles of distancing and loss, lots of, what are they, like on a computer, loss of information, degradation of something, you lose bits or bytes or whatever they're called. Loss of information. How these people can recognize each other. We've got this language group over here, we've got this language group over here, we've got this one here, that one there. This iconographic tradition, depict the Lord. Some don't depict the Lord at all. They describe him, though. He's described, Ariel, Aria, and Ariel. In the litany of names of the lion-headed form of Krishna is Haraya. And the Jewish is Araya. And they both mean exactly the same thing. So, over and over and over again, we have this distancing, separation, and now there's all these prejudices, all these impediments. And the Lord hasn't hidden himself anywhere. It's human ego, spiritual pride, a lot, spiritual pride, and just plain poor information. The average Catholic doesn't even know what they have. So to build a bridge, you have to have a firm foundation in place. If people don't have a good Christian education, a good Catholic education, it has to be Catholic. You're not going to get any of this from Protestantism. I can do this with the King James Version because how I'm coming at it as a Catholic. I can still find it in here. This is how much God is not hidden. You can take things like the King James Bible and you can prove a lot of my thesis just with what's in the King James Bible, even when it doesn't have the Apocrypha in it. And the Apocrypha is so important. So, I was looking up something. Is that thing on?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, we'll turn it off for a second. Let me find something for you.